Hey there, thanks for tuning in, logging on, and we are continuing our safety unit. More exciting note taking today, but it's important information you need to know for an assessment. So let's jump right in. Just like before, you need to go on Google Classroom. It's called Safety Part 2, and today we're talking all about hazards. Now, if you remember from our previous lesson about safety, a hazard is simply a danger at work. It could even be at home, but we're talking about work. And what did I say about hazards? Don't ignore them, please. Pay attention. We do not want you hurt. All right, so as I mentioned, we're talking about hazards. Everyone should have found their note-taking sheet in Google Classroom, and let's begin. So a job hazard is anything at work that can hurt you either physically or mentally. Some are obvious and easily seen, but others are not. Some hazards can hurt you now, and others can cause you problems in the future. So the first type of hazard that we need to take notes on is a safety hazard. A safety hazard can cause immediate injuries. So the examples they give here are knives or hot grease. If you touch it, it could hurt you. So be careful. So a safety hazard could cause immediate injury. And let's note those examples. Hot grease, knives. Think for a minute what else would be an immediate hazard, a safety hazard. How about a hot pipe? That could hurt you. How about a sharp edge, a sharp corner? I always run into the same table at school, and I get a bruise in the same place on my leg. I need to pay attention. I need to follow my own advice. Don't ignore those hazards. All right, chemical hazards. Right down here. Chemical hazards, sometimes you can't even see. They are gases, vapors, liquids, or dusts that can harm your body. Gases, vapors, liquids, or dust that can harm your body. And the examples here include cleaning products, pesticides, which are chemicals that kill insects, now obviously you have to use cleaning products as you're told at work. So we'll learn later how to prevent problems because of cleaning products, which can be a chemical hazard. As we always say, pause the video if this is going too fast. Otherwise, we will keep moving on. Biological hazards are living things that can cause sickness or disease, such as HIV/AIDS, hepatitis, tuberculosis. Kind of funny, the reason we are doing e-learning and you are not at school or work is because of the coronavirus, which is a biological hazard. So a biological hazard would be bacteria or viruses. And we're going to keep the notes simple for that one, okay? So we're just going to say that they are bacteria or viruses, living things that can cause sickness. So whenever you hear about hand washing, whenever you hear about covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, that is to prevent biological hazards. Remember, if you have a fever over 100 degrees, if you are vomiting, if you can't stop coughing, You don't want to go into work. All right, next up, other health hazards. Now this is interesting. You might not think of noise as a hazard, but it certainly can cause harm. Radiation would be if you're working with material that could cause exposure to dangerous, unseen waves that could cause cancer. That one's going to be unusual, hopefully. Repetitive movements, if you're doing the same thing over and over. Heat, cold, stress, and harassment. So these are other harmful things that can injure you or make you sick. And we're just going to grab a few examples for your notes. The most common for you might be noise, might be heat or cold, could be stress, could be harassment. Now these are interesting. People don't usually think of stress as a health hazard at work. People don't think of harassment as a health hazard at work. But an angry customer could definitely be a hazard. And if a customer is very angry, it could become dangerous, and you can get your manager for support. Also, you want to find ways to manage stress because over time, it can really wear you down. So if you're feeling stressed about work, maybe talk with your work coordinator, talk with a trusted friend, and try to figure out how to reduce that stress. Just a couple more things for our notes. Here we see something that you actually don't need to take notes on, but it's a list of common hazards, and there are many. You're going to see safety hazards a lot in your workplace. Hot surfaces, slippery floors, ladders, machines, knives, as we said, hot grease. Watch out for electrical circuits. If you see raw wires, do not touch them ever. Lack of fire exits, always know how to get out in a fire. Motor vehicles, be careful around cars. Cluttered work areas, try to keep them cleaned up. Falling objects, violence, don't be fighting at work, that's a hazard. Or areas that are too dark or too light. Make sure you can see so you don't get hurt. I'm not going to go through all these chemical hazards and biological hazards. Just know that the most common are cleaning supplies when it comes to chemicals. And biological hazards would be sickness. Okay? Under other health hazards, we've talked about noise, vibration, radiation, heat or cold. You want to be sure that if you're working out in the cold that you bundle up. If you're working in heat, that you take breaks and drink a lot of water. Now how about this one, heavy lifting? We'll jump down here. A lot of jobs are going to require heavy lifting. You want to bend your knees. They say lift with your legs. Do not bend at your waist. You want to kind of squat in order to pick things up instead of bending in half. Otherwise you will hurt your back. Fast pace of work, sometimes you can't avoid it, but just do your best to keep up. And then we've talked about harassment and stress. So let's finish off our notes. Common hazards are household cleaning products. You really need to know this. Here you see some gloves. Go ahead and use gloves when you're using cleaning supplies at work. It can really protect your skin. And you don't want to get cuts and sores on your hands because those can get infected and get gross. So let's just note that common hazards include household or workplace cleaning supplies. And finally, PPE. It stands for personal protective equipment. It's very important when you're working with hazardous material. Personal protective equipment. And I'd like you to list some examples. So we already showed gloves, could be helmets, safety goggles, steel-toed boots, non-slip shoes. There are many examples, and your employer will tell you what you need to use. All right, that completes our notes. Go ahead and finish part 2, true or false, and submit through Google Classroom, please. Thanks.